Welcome back to RealHouseDIY. Today we're getting the MechMaxx SG24 stump grinder installed on the tractor. If you haven't seen the last video, I have that in the playlist on my channel. Go check it out. In that video, we talked about the ordering, delivery, unpacking, and initially moving this off of your driveway. And my tractor is the Kubota B2601, so this video is going to be tailored to installing the stump grinder on the B2601 tractor. So all I've done so far is remove that top part of the crate, took out the box with the PTO shaft, and then I just needed to move this off of my driveway. I don't have forks for the tractor, so I got this set up so I could lift it with the 3-point hitch. And to get it ready to pick up with 3-point hitch, this is shipped rotated down, so you have to loosen this bolt in the middle, rotate it up, add the 4 bolts, and then this is all set to lift with the 3-point hitch of your tractor. For tools that you'll need, I actually have right here in the manual tube, I have all the wrenches that you'll need. However, I also have my automotive tool set with larger wrenches and sockets, so I'm probably going to be using those. You also want some cutters for these zip ties. If you find that you need to shorten the PTO shaft, you'll need an angle grinder with a metal cutoff disc. Then for the last part of the setup on this PTO shaft, you'll need a set of vernier calipers for measuring the spring distance. So next I'll install the deflector plate, which is stored right here. So I have my 13mm socket and wrench and the bag with the nuts and bolts inside the tube. Next, I'll probably never use it, but the chainsaw holder gets installed right here. This one's using a 16mm on the bolt, 17mm on the nut. The instructions show this small plate on the opposite side, but still the knob and the bolts facing this direction. I don't think it really matters which side this plate is on, but you do want to use a 16mm wrench and socket. Tighten up the bottom bolts. And then the knob on the top is just used for tightening the top, get your chainsaw in there for transport if and when you need that. And for now, I'll get this tightened up just so it's not vibrating during use. Finally, your manual tube, which is going to hold your tools and the manual rolled up in there, gets mounted right on top here. The hardware was inside the tube and it uses 10mm wrenches. Now with that installed, you can put that cap back on the tube. Next, with the basic assembly done, before I take off these bolts from the lower part of the crate, I'm going to back up the tractor, attach to the 3-point hitch. That'll remove those bolts, lift up the stump grinder, and I'll take that lower crate off. I have it on the 3-point hitch. I did need to lift this up a little bit to get the last pin in over there. I should add for this tractor the Kubota B2601. This is the stock 3-point hitch that comes with the tractor. So now this is lowered again. I'm going to loosen and take off these bolts from the bottom part of the crate. These are 13 millimeter. Next, we're going to start working on the PTO shaft. For that, we need to raise or lower the 3-point hitch so that the connection point here on the stump grinder lines up with the PTO connection on the tractor. Next, you'll need a measuring tape. You'll measure the distance between the locking groove on the shaft of the stump grinder, which is this one right here. It's about 1.5 inches back from the front of the shaft. And you'll measure from there to the same locking grooves on the shaft of your tractor PTO. It's these grooves right here. So I'll measure that distance and I get 33 inches. Next, on the PTO shaft, they have you verify 34-inch measurement from this location where you have the locking pins to this location here with this locking pin. Double check that. I have 34 inches. You take that measurement with the PTO shaft compressed as much as possible. So at the tractor PTO to the stump grinder shaft, I get 33 inches. I already know that won't accommodate a 34-inch shaft. So that means we're going to have to trim the shaft. The instructions give you a calculation to determine how much to trim from the PTO shaft. Have B minus A. B is the 34-inch measurement of the shaft. A is the measurement at the tractor. So 34 minus 33 is 1. Add 1 inch and you get 2, and that's the amount to trim. They have you trim an additional inch, and that allows for ease of assembly and to make sure the shaft isn't bottoming out. So I'll get the tools, we'll start cutting the shaft. Now I'm ready to trim the plastic cover of the PTO shaft and the metal PTO shaft. I've got some snips for cutting the plastic. If that doesn't work, I'll go get a hacksaw. Marking my cut lines with some blue tape. Then to secure the metal PTO shaft, while I'm using an angle grinder, I've got some ratchet straps. I've got the angle grinder with a metal cutoff disc and some safety gear. I have a large file for smoothing the outside of the PTO shafts after the cut, some small files for smoothing the inside. This is actually holding really well, so I'm going to start trimming that part of the PTO shaft. That actually cut extremely well and straight. That won't take much work to smooth the edges over. Now I've got the edges smooth inside and outside on the PTO shafts, both sides. Get this put back together. Now I didn't notice it at first, but you can see the two sides of the PTO shaft, they're actually not identical three ways around. It's bell-shaped. This piece up at the top is flat. So it's only going to go back together in that orientation. And if we get that measurement again, it should now be 32 inches. Which is what we have. It's perfect. Now we can get this installed. You'll find this is definitely easier to install on the stump grinder side first. Takes a lot of wiggling to get this all the way on. And then remove this, need a little bit extra room. Set that aside. And then I lowered the stump grinder just a little bit. You have to depress the spring here. Get the snap in place at the PTO on the tractor. Now I've got this wiggled on as far as it can go, and you can tell that's installed as far as it can go because you can't see those splines anymore, those grooves on the shaft. Then you're gonna add the bolts back if you took them out. Didn't really need to take them out. Just make sure they were loose. This is 18 millimeter at the bolt, 19 millimeter for the nut. And finally we have these chains here. Doesn't really mention these in the instructions, but I believe it's to prevent the cover from spinning around during operation. So you can attach these to pretty much anything you want. Find something that's easy to clip it to. You can see that'll spin and stop. Get the other one attached since it's two halves of the cover. All right, now I've got this parked on a nice level surface. And I can see it's not quite touching the ground at the front there, so I'm gonna have to adjust the top link, pull that in a little bit, get it to sit nice and flat. All right, so I'm gonna tighten this up. It'll tilt forward. Wait till it gets sitting there on the ground. On both sides. I get some resistance right there. A little more. There we go. Now it's sitting nice and flat. The two spots left and right. So if you look down at the bottom here, you don't want this cutter that's sticking out. You don't want that straight down because then the disc will be sitting right on the cutter. And it looks like actually you have a tiny little bit of clearance there, so that's good. So here you can see as you lift the stump grinder on the 3-point hitch, the two halves of the PTO shaft get closer together. So in the raised position, you won't be able to disconnect the PTO shaft from the PTO and the tractor. You want to do that when it's in the low position and you'll have more room to work with. Next, we need to loosen all these spring tension nuts until they're flush with the ends of the bolts. For this, we're using 16 and 17 millimeter wrenches. So loosen this first one here, you can see the spring extended. You repeat that for all 8. Next, we're adjusting the spring height based on the horsepower of your PTO. Now the Kubota B2601, it's a 26 horsepower tractor, but the horsepower at the PTO is 19.5. So per the instructions for 15 to 20 PTO horsepower, that spring height needs to be 1.26 inches or 31.9 millimeters. For this, you definitely want to get a set of vernier calipers if you don't already have one. You need to get a very precise measurement for this. It's between the 15 and 20 horsepower up to the 45 horsepower. The spring height difference is only about 1 millimeter. So I've got this set to about 31.9 millimeters. And you can see this side is a little bit hard to get in there with that cover on. And actually you can see this one at the bottom. It's the easiest to get the calipers on that side. So I may adjust this one first, then disconnect the PTO shaft at the tractor side so I can turn this and adjust each one when it's at the bottom right here. So that looks good right there. Able to measure with the calipers really nicely for each of the bottom 2 springs. So I got those 2 set. I'll rotate the shaft 3 more times to finish getting the measurements correct. So now I'll disconnect the shaft at the tractor side so I can easily rotate the stump grinder. So now I can easily rotate this. Get the next 2 springs ready on the bottom to adjust. Now I have all these spring heights set to 31.9 millimeters. I'll reattach to the PTO on the tractor. Next we need to make a mark across 3 plates on the inside here. And the first time I was trying this with a marker, the marker didn't quite reach inside here. So I'm using a nice sharp pencil. So when we do the clutch run-in, we want to see these 3 marks move different positions to confirm that the clutch is slipped. On the Kubota B2601, I already have it set to the rear PTO. I'm just going to use this lever here to engage the PTO and disengage the PTO after the engine is running. And when I engage and disengage the PTO, I'll have the engine at low idle. Shut off the tractor, remove the key, and after everything stops moving, you can approach. I do that clutch run about 5 times before I could actually find the marks I had. There's the one on the middle plate, it's right there. Marks on the left and right plates, they're hidden further down below. So we've confirmed that the clutch has slipped. Now if you try this per the instructions and you did not get clutch slippage, there are a few options you can do before taking the clutch apart. The clutch plates might not be seized, it might just be tight. Loosen those spring tension nuts all the way back out, flush to the ends of the bolts again, all 8 of them. Then do the clutch run-in procedure again. Check for clutch slippage. If it's good, it's loosened up. Then you can readjust those spring tension nuts back to the position they were in before. Finally, assembly is done. Before we start using it, they want you to check with the 24mm wrench that all of the cutters are tight. It's 34 total. And interestingly, there's at least one that cannot get the provided 24mm wrench on. However, I have another 24mm wrench that I can reach it. Assembly on the Kubota B2601 tractor is now done. We're going to start stump grinding. Stay tuned for the next video, get a demo and a review. Thanks for watching.